Over the years of gaming on my PC, when it comes to From Software titles like Dark Souls, to shooters like Destiny 2, and I just want to break from the mouse and keyboard, I've been using the first iteration of the Xbox One Elite controller, but just a few months ago, sadly, one of the rear paddle buttons collapsed and failed, and a few weeks later, the right shoulder button decided to break as well. Now, don't get me wrong, Microsoft's flagship controller is excellent and lasted many hours of gaming sessions for me, but I just wasn't ready to pay the premium again for the new and improved Elite 2. So, like many of you would have done, I watched a ton of videos and took a deep dive to what is on offer on the market today. And I decided to go with this, and at just 69 Australian dollars during a sale, but retails for 49 US, let me tell you, was I pleasantly surprised. This is the Pro 2 controller by 8BitDo, the successor to the already well-loved SM30 Pro Plus, and in this video, I'm going to give you valid reasons as to why I think you should pick this controller up and save the rest of your money for some upcoming titles or other upgrades for your setup. Let's get to the most important stuff first. The Pro 2's functionality is exceptional for its price tag. I was in the market for a controller that offered two main things. One, some form of back paddles or triggers, and two, custom remapping of buttons. Now, this is because when playing titles like Elden Ring or Monster Hunter Rise, once you have the opportunity to move the camera whilst maintaining something like sprint or being able to jump, roll, or attack at the same time was just a level up in my opinion. And I can see why it would prove to be a straight up advantage in other titles, for instance, something like Call of Duty, being able to crouch whilst you shoot, to games like Rocket League where you have multiple inputs to deal with whilst maintaining eyes on the ball and the direction of travel for your car. Main reason number one, back paddles. They're responsive and provide great feedback, and I've had no issues with where they're placed for my hand size. I do want to mention though that the placement can be a negative for some of you, as it's in that sweet spot where the middle fingers usually rest on the back of the controller if the paddles weren't there. The downgrade here is that there are only two of them, so if you feel as if you've relied on the 4 back paddles on something like a Microsoft Elite controller, this Pro 2 might not be for you. If anything, they are a tiny bit too light in terms of actuation, combined with being quite large, so accidentally pressing, the buttons might happen in some cases, but by default, the back paddles are assigned to no command, so out of the box, you're good. The face buttons, in my opinion, have just the right amount of give to them. I personally feel like they're similar to a PlayStation 5 DualSense, and less of an Xbox controller if that helps with comparison. They aren't mushy by any means and respond very well to actuations and inputs, but keep in mind that I think 8BitDo chose to go with the ABXY button layout for Nintendo users, which means they're flipped when comparing them to the Xbox controller, which in turn for me did take some time getting used to again. Front bumpers are light and a little too hollow for my liking, but they are usable, and the triggers are tight and slightly lighter than that of a DualSense, so I'd say the majority of us would be happy to use them. I do prefer these types of triggers in comparison to something like the Switch Pro, for example, as the Switch Pro are pretty much buttons instead of triggers. I'm not much of a retro gamer myself, or haven't played many games that require heavier use of the D-pad, but from what I've used it for, I've had no issues with it whatsoever. I'd say it has a better feel to that overall than the PlayStation 5 controller. To me, it just feels more solid and robust. It's scarily similar in quality to retro controllers known for their D-pad, something like the Super Nintendo, which I personally think had just the right amount of tactility and feedback. For you 2D retro gamers out there, the position of the D-pad is where it should be compared to other controllers in that regard. Now let's talk joysticks, and again I feel as if they're very similar in shape, size and height of that of a DualSense, albeit a little bit smaller and lighter during use, and overall carries the same ergonomic layout and feel. For those of you coming from an asymmetric stick setup on an Xbox controller and prefer that, then this may be where you pass on the Pro 2. They do have a smooth rotational use and have consistently provided me with accurate movement and control during gameplay without drift. The other face buttons like the start and select are rubber and akin to the classic retro feel, but are still quite responsive and not as mushy as other controllers that have similar buttons. To round off the functionality aspect, the Pro 2 offers a turbo button for those that need it, and another programmable button mirrored to the position of the turbo. Just in case you want another one, you can assign something specific to. It also sports a 6-axis motion sensor, but it doesn't have NFC capabilities like the Switch Pro controller. Right, let's talk ergonomics, and the controller feels great in my hands. It shares a similar body shape and proportions to a DualShock 4 controller, but is slightly skinnier around the grips. This is a deliberate design choice to facilitate better access to those rear paddles. All the buttons feel comfortable to reach, and after a handful of sessions with it, my muscle memory hasn't failed me yet in terms of accidental inputs or missing a button completely. In short, the Pro 2 feels great in hand and will satisfy the majority of users. Now from an aesthetic standpoint, I am a sucker for nostalgia, and if you're anything like me, go with the colorway that I have, which is the two-tone gray. A classic Game Boy colorway is also available, which may appeal to some of you out there. They do both reflect the Nintendo retro consoles color schemes of old, and are just nicer looking in my opinion in comparison to the third choice, which is an all-black counterpart. The face buttons on my colorway are weirdly similar to PlayStation 1 face buttons, but we'll look beyond that. Regardless of what colorway you go with out of the three, the finish of the materials are uniform and of high quality, and what I believe are above my standards and expectations for a controller with this price tag. There is enough texture there in all the right places to satisfy grip and handling, and it does take cleaning well too. The overall shape reminds me more of a PlayStation 1 controller for you veteran gamers out there, but we all know 8BitDo's real inspiration draws from the Nintendo's earliest iteration of gamepads and controllers. Now it's time to cover what makes the controller even more incredible at this price point. And if you're like me and play a lot of games on a variety of consoles and systems, this is a controller you should seriously consider. The 4-way mode switch housed on the back allows you to toggle between using it on the Nintendo Switch, Android, and Apple devices such as phones, tablets, PCs, or laptops, and it's all accessible via a stable 4.0 Bluetooth connection. I've never had issues via wireless pairing, but you do get a bonus USB-C cable for both charging and data too, so that you have that option to play plugged in whilst you juice it up. Now this leads me to the other awesome feature. The Pro 2 comes with a rechargeable 1000 mAh removable battery, and in my real world testing I got about 18 to 20 hours of gaming with it before it needed charging, which is easily multiple sessions in front of a screen. What's even better is that 8BitDo have given us the option to access this and remove it so that you can replace it with AA batteries, and to put it simply, it is a welcome feature not many controllers have today. It can provide you with spare power on the go without needing to plug it in and go wired, or perhaps maybe after several years of heavy use, the cells in the rechargeable battery that it comes with doesn't hold a good charge or like it used to, and you'll have the option there to outright replace it or just go with AA's. Win-win. Lastly, I mentioned custom button remapping being one of the two things I need in a controller, and to me, this is where the Pro 2 reflects such a great price to performance ratio. 8BitDo call it their ultimate software and offers an extensive amount of customization options at a glance. This can be accessed on your phone or tablet for wireless configuration with the app, and the upside is that you can program and test buttons on the fly whilst still being connected to the device. This freedom is actually a pretty big deal because it removes the fuss of connecting the controller via a cable, saving and syncing the buttons to the device, which can get a bit tiresome, especially if you just want to test out macros or simply find the best layout of buttons for a specific game. The software covers button remapping in a no-fuss method. You simply read the diagram that displays button configuration and you reassign button inputs using the drop-down menu with the respective commands. Joysticks can also be adjusted for custom dead zones and inactive or active areas. You can even invert the X and Y axis. Heck, you can even have the options to swap the sticks and the D-pad control, which I feel is pretty niche, but for those that want it, it's a great option to have. Now for the triggers, unlike the Elite that can be physically locked to have hair triggers for smaller input windows, the Pro 2 provides the option digitally to have triggers with the inactive and active zones based on the amount of squeeze you give them. Vibration and rumble features can be adjusted and outright turned off if you don't want it. And lastly, Pro 2 gives you access to macros, which can be strung into certain combos of button presses, albeit with timers for specific actions and inputs. I haven't dabbled into the macros just yet because I rarely use them in-game, so let me know in the comments section down below how you've gone with them, and if you are already using this controller, I'd be keen to see if I can somehow incorporate them into the games that I'm currently frequenting. To finalize the ultimate software, the Pro 2 is capable of saving 3 custom profiles that can be toggled with the button found below the start and select. So for those of you that are deep into their customization and programmable buttons for each genre of game, for instance, it is there for you. So to summarize, I really like this controller. The Pro 2 offers something for anyone and everyone. Safe to say you don't mind the joystick layout and the 2 battles on the back. From its comprehensive customized options and available colorways to its excellent build quality, reliable connectivity, and solid usability as a gaming controller across pretty much almost all platforms, the Pro 2 is a great buy for anyone out there that wants a gamepad that can pretty much almost do it all and do it well. So that's it. If you're interested in purchasing one for yourself, I've left some links down to it below. They usually go on sale quite frequently, and that's when I purchase one for myself. But even if you pay the full price for it, it's still a great pickup. If you have any questions about the Pro 2 or any other questions in general, make sure to leave them in the comment section down below and I will be certain to get back to you. As always, a huge thanks for watching, and until then, I will see you in the next video.